Again, my name is Langley Rock. I'm here to talk about the EU CRA from a product owner's perspective. I've been working for Dell Technologies for about 3 years, and although it might look like only a shameless plug, I wanted to draw attention to some of the other high-tech companies I've worked for previously, because one of the common themes is when working with my engineering team stakeholders, they all want to do the right thing. But sometimes they run into conflicting priorities that prevent them to do so. The other times, they get frustrated easily when the requirements aren't easily communicated to them, or they just don't make sense. They don't understand the why sometimes behind the requirements. So my history of 20 years of product security has been, focused originally on common criteria and FIP certifications for a couple of organizations, then transitioned to a focus of product security, SDL, or secure development life cycles, and then more recently, GRC type related roles. And once again, this is a common theme. People want to do the right thing. You just need to make sure that the requirements are really well understood. And that is my role today as a product owner for vulnerability response, policies and standards, and regulatory and GRC related activities. And I am based in Ottawa, Canada. I was able to make it over. Okay, I'm going to try and see the screen from here, because my eyes are not the greatest, unfortunately. So there were some very good presentations this morning, especially delivered by Krobe on the EU CRA, went into extensive detail to the number of the requirements. I just want to give a very brief elevator pitch as to what the EU CRA is. Software and hardware vendors will have to comply with the provisions in the EU CRA if they want to continue doing business in the EU. As simple as that. Once passed, which we anticipate as being December the 11th, 2027 for most of the requirements. Non-compliance is subject to fines of up to 15 million euros or 2.5% of the annual revenue of the organization. No examples have been set yet, so we don't know, if someone is going to be made an example of. Hopefully this $15 million is indeed a worst case, and it is per infraction. Now, naturally, this is going to have an impact on our downstream suppliers. As one of the things that have been discussed earlier is that open source stewards are not being held to the same requirements, which basically means that if you have an open source component in your product, and your product has a vulnerability in that open source component, you are ultimately responsible for it. And you have to rely on your trust relationships and your relationships with your suppliers to get those vulnerabilities fixed or fix them yourself. And one of the other problems or facts that you might need to take into consideration is that if the requirement for no known vulnerabilities is strictly enforced, it might actually have a big impact on your ability to get products to market. So we talked about what the EU CRA is at a very, very high level. How do we meet compliance? So there's a concept of harmonized standards, and these standards are basically written for the EU CRA or will be written for the EU CRA. And there's an assumption, if you will, or a provision that if you're compliant with the harmonized standards, you are meeting all your legal obligations as part of the Act. As of today, those standards do not exist. There are a lot of different drafts or frameworks in progress, but if worst case scenario materializes, we're not going to have those provisions until 2027. So what do? Do we actually just wait, or do we actually try and take some action today to, against the requirements that we do know of? And hopefully this proactive approach that I'm going to be talking to or giving an overview of is going to give you some tools in your tool chest to have those elevator conversations, if you will. So talking about the harmonized standards, there are basically four groups of categories or four groups of products that we need to look at. A default product, something similar to an alarm clock, if you will, or a smart refrigerator. I mean, these will fall into the default category, and only a self-assessment is necessary for them to actually be able to get the mark. Important class 1 products. So this would be an operating system, a physical or virtual network interface, a web browser. These are all classified as category 1. And a self-assessment is okay as long as you can demonstrate compliance with a harmonized standard. Important class 2 products are a little bit more stringent, such as hypervisors or smart cards. Or sorry, smart cards are an example of the critical. TPMs, trusted platform modules. Those would be examples of class 2 products. And then the critical product would be something like a smart card. In the case of the important class 2 and smart card products, it's not something that you can do in-house. You're going to have to go to an external evaluation body, such as one of them that show up in the NANDO database. Or in the case of smart cards and those critical products, go through a lengthy common criteria, an expensive common criteria certification. Now, the definition of these products are still being worked out. And as a matter of fact, this is an open period for commentary. And I believe the period closes next week on the 15th. So stay tuned for more information in that regard. So as I mentioned, important class 1s include the concept of operating systems and physical network interfaces. And in an operating system, you can have other elements, so it can include a password manager. It can include the web browser. It can include VPN functionality. But the point that I want to stress, going on to the next slide, is if you look at a general purpose computing platform, it does not even though you might include an operating system and that operating system might include the physical network interfaces, it does not necessarily mean, by the way the regulation is being written, it does not necessarily mean that you are automatically a class 1 product. So this is where those definitions and the ratification of those definitions really is important. So this is going to be a little bit more difficult for me to present, unfortunately. But basically, does this come out? No. Let's see if I can get this out. No. Okay. I'm going to come around to the other side of the podium. Let's improvise. All right. So basically, here's a short list of some of the steps that we took to try and reach compliance. First of all, identify your target products. Try to understand what group those products might fall under, and figure out not only what groups they're in, but also try to understand whether or not they will be on the market in December 2027, because this is only going to affect new products that are placed on the market or made available on the market as of that date. Bucketize the requirements into themes, and I will be giving you a demo or a view of what those themes may look like. But bucketize in the themes. Identify, when you go through the CRA requirements, look at what there is and identify what you do today and what you do well, and put that into a bucket of lowest perceived risk. Then look at what you've already got, where you already have plans in motion. And take a risk-based approach based on the complexity of the changes or of the work that needs to be done. You might need to accelerate your work. You might need to pivot a little bit. And then plan out areas where you believe practices are weak or non-existent. So these are the net new requirements. And this is really where you need to work with your lawyer your legal people, to come up with a risk-based approach, and then work with your internal stakeholders to figure out exactly where the effort and readiness lies. Cross-reference those net new requirements against your security charter. Hopefully everyone here works for an organization where there is a security charter when it comes to the products, the software and the hardware products that you deliver. And identify the low-hanging fruit. Identify where you believe that you have bigger gaps from what the CRA is looking for. Implement a risk-based reporting, and this is one of the key points I can't stress enough. Alongside of making sure that you identify your stakeholders and you socialize, from the top down as well as the bottom up. It's really important that with that socialization and that risk-based reporting, you are able to bring visibility to those areas of the CRA that are not going to be met in time, and let the company help you make the decision. We all want to do the right thing. We all think that we can, do our little part, but some of these decisions are going to be bigger than each of us as individuals. And we really need to come together as an organization and figure it out as an organization, and let the organization understand and, decide how they want to treat that risk. Also, if you're a product owner, you actually, develop or you're responsible for a software or hardware product, start looking at your 3-year plan now, as it's more like a 2.5-year plan. But try to bake in the security requirements more than you maybe have done in the past. It is going to be really important for you to be ready out of the gate, and make sure that any fiscal targets, any delivery dates, really take into consideration the security requirements as well. So here's an example of what the requirements look like. So this is an example of what net new requirements might look like for an organization. It is not necessarily, and I will stress this, it does not necessarily represent what Dell has done, but there are requirements in the CRA that talk about continuous testing, and that can go into a security testing bucket, if you will. And then security updates, where you have the secure distribution of updates, automatic downloads from products, download configuration, and decouple security updates. Those seem to mesh together. Vulnerability response is a big one, and I glossed over it due to the technical difficulties earlier, but vulnerability response requirements are kicking in September 2026, not December 2027. So this is going to be another level of involvement and another milestone that people are going to be expected to meet. But documenting vulnerabilities and remediations, timely communication and remediation, coordinated disclosure, and making sure that the advisories are available in a machine-readable format is going to be paramount. Security assessments, the internal work that needs to be done, analysis of cybersecurity risks, technical documentation to support the good practices that you're following, and that those will fall into a bucket of security assessments. So hopefully you're getting the idea of what I'm talking about here. Go through the various annexes of the requirements, put them into buckets, and then that maybe merge those buckets into higher level objectives depending on how your organization structure is established. I mentioned the security charter earlier. So really, hopefully every organization has one of these, but if not, it's a good time to start working with your senior leadership to put one together. And really where this is important is it's when working with various internal stakeholders, you want to build that street credibility. And if you don't have a security charter now, unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit more complicated for you than, say, an organization that has had a charter for a longer period of time, simply because you have been warning your stakeholders that this is coming down the pipe. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. Well, it's finally happening. So hopefully the security charter that is in place has encouraged teams to start doing the right thing and start documenting what they're doing, so to make the CRA requirements a little bit less onerous. So to wrap this up, the EU CRA will significantly impact how end-to-end security product teams function, and December 2027 isn't that far away. Despite some ambiguities remaining, we must align our practices with the essential requirements, focusing on these key deliverables: a proactive approach to product development roadmaps, third-party risk management, and determination of products needing to meet the harmonized standards. Industry collaboration through established organizations will be paramount. I'm a member of the Safe Code organization that focuses on it, and I believe OpenSSF has one as well. And we recognize that the next 2.5 years will be a challenge for industry to align practices with the CRA requirements, but hopefully some of the guidelines provided will help you set yourselves up for success. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, could you go to the mic, please? Thank you. I'll try to hear, sure. Thank you.
Implemented, there's no way to actually release a product because there are like 82 vulnerabilities released every day and you will never get a product out. So how are you thinking, like, till they I don't think they will implement it in that strict way, but what is your vision of what you are trying to like do within your organization to address that?
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, you're asking how we perceive the requirements of known exploitable vulnerabilities and how we're going to manage that. Well, I can't tell you how we're going to manage it because I don't think all those details are being sorted out. But my view is that there needs to be a milestone in your software or hardware development lifecycle where there's a known cutoff point when you go to release your release processes. I think part of this is going to be exercising due diligence and making sure that you can clearly document with the authorities that you are testing for vulnerabilities during your build processes. You're testing them, testing for vulnerabilities during your test phases, your quality control, and then it gets to a certain point where at that point, then you pass it off to your release processes, but you still have the continued testing and you can have the continued awareness to be able to detect new vulnerabilities, and you rely on your vulnerability response program to remediate those. Yes. Yes, but I think the biggest point is that the authorities are going to want to see that you've thought this program through. One of the comments that being previously made is that earlier today is that the authorities are not necessarily concerned about the nuances, right? And they just want to make sure that vendors are taking this seriously. Yes, Mike.
Been breached the last 10, 15 years. Because if you have to call a halt at some point, that means that you've chosen what you're doing. You can't just keep putting stuff out.
No, I don't think it's an end. Personally, I don't think it's an end to CI/CD. It's not an area that I'm really well versed in, so I can't speak to it in too much detail. But when you're looking to rapidly deploy functionality to a system, there's nothing stopping you from checking for existing vulnerabilities and patching those at the same time. Right. Yes. That is correct. Right. So there's concepts of being placed on the market and being available on the market. Available on the market is the time frame that you just mentioned. And so if you're putting a product on the market on October, then yes, those requirements will apply as of December. Yes, Cassie? I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I had difficulty hearing it. Okay, I wasn't aware that there is an implication of 7x24 report staffing. There are requirements for the vulnerabilities whereby you can actually do an early notification 24 hours after discovery. I think that will follow your own internal processes. Any other questions? Yes.
That's just because the CRA is mostly a risk-based any recommendation of, because we had for standards, recommendation, but for risk assessment frameworks or something which would actually help.
Yes, I believe the EU CRA or ENISA, I'm getting confused with the organization, but there is already a recommended risk management framework that you can follow. Any more questions from the field, Cassie? Okay, well, thank you very much.